As I came to United States, then I started to meet and learn from different people. So I thought I was the big fish in the small pond until I realized there was a big pond out there and I was a small fish. A lot of the people that have inspired each one of us have been the people who have gone on to change the industry. When I actually were being inspired, I knew their name, but I never met them. Now we get to meet with them, and now you can at least look at them and say how much they change your life. But I can tell you that the biggest inspiration for me, or biggest mentor for me, has been my own life. Life never stops teaching. It is us who stop learning. So just every experience we have, if we keep an open mind, we can learn from every single person we meet. Even that homeless person, if you can give him 5 minutes of your time, he will tell you about his life story, what got him into where he is, and maybe hopefully you won't make that mistake.
Need motivation?
What's the top 10 with Believe Nation?
Hey, it's Carmichael, and I make these videos because I need them. Because I don't always wake up and feel motivated to go take on the day. And the thing that saves me, that helps me every day, is being around people who are thinking bigger, who are changing the world, and it gives me a little more inspiration to go after my mission. And so I hope this video helps you go after yours today too. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Naveen Jain, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2.
Improve the lives of others.
If you can find anything that can help 1 billion people live a better life, you can create $100 billion company. But you don't wake up in the morning and say, I want to create $100 billion company. What do I do? Making money is simply a byproduct of doing things that improve other people's life. It's that simple. And if many of you who likes R-rated stuff, let me explain you in R-rated terms. Making money is like having an orgasm. If you focus on it, you're never going to get it, right? So enjoy the process.
Rule number 3 is don't give up.
Company is just a shell. What it does can change. So your ideas may or may not work. And every idea that does not work is simply a stepping stone to a different idea and a bigger idea, right? You look at Twitter. Twitter didn't start out as Twitter. They were a different company. The company did not do well. They say, look, guys, current investors, we can return your money, or we are going to pivot into doing this microblogging service. And some investors stayed with them, and some said, give us our money back. But the point was they pivoted and they created a different company. And in fact, you could argue that almost every successful company has gone through a near-death experience, right? Whether you look at Facebook, you look at Oracle, every one of them.
I agree with you.
Right.
Yeah.
So point is, that's the time to pivot rather than give up. So the idea is you say that path does not work and I'm going to go with a different path that may work. And your idea is to keep the same purpose alive. So you never give up on your purpose. You give up on the execution of that purpose and you move on to the next thing.
Rule number 4 is ask the right questions.
Asking the right questions allows you to focus on the problem you're going to be solving. Every time you go to an expert, the question they always ask, how do we do that? And a moonshot thinker like you should be always asking, why are we doing it? So the experts think about how to do it, moonshot thinkers come about why to do it. Most innovations fail because they end up solving the symptom of the problem rather than solving the root cause. And sometimes solving the symptom may give you a short-time success until someone comes and solves the root cause, and then you're completely out of business. And let me give you a couple of examples of how that happens. Now, for example, everyone knows the lack of fresh water is one of the biggest problems facing humanity. Now, if you were an entrepreneur and thinking that I want to go out and solve the problem of fresh water, and you come up with a nano filter that is able to actually take a dirty water or desalinized water and start to think about how do we get the fresh water out, and you really focus on solving that problem. And one of you moonshot thinker asked the question and saying, wait a second, why do we have the shortage of fresh water? And suddenly you will realize the reason we have a shortage of fresh water is because majority of the water is being used for agriculture. And then you say, oh, so agriculture is really the root cause here. And what if We can build hydroponic agriculture, aquaponic agriculture, aeroponic agriculture, and now you think you have actually found the root cause and you really focused on solving the agriculture problem. Until another moonshot thinker asked the same question, why do we have all this agriculture? And soon you will realize, once you ask the question, where does all this agriculture going, you will realize that majority of agriculture is there to feed the cattle. You now need to figure out how do we solve the problem of raising the cattle. And obviously we are raising these cattle to feed people the meat. I'm not suggesting that now your job is to make everybody a vegetarian. But your job is to say, how do we feed people the meat they want to eat without having to raise the cattle? So what if we do what the nature does? Take a stem cell of a cow and only create the muscle tissues, because that's all people eat. They're not eating the eyes, they're not eating the ears, they're not eating a whole bunch of other things that when you raise the cattle you have to have. What if you can simply take the same stem cell and only create the muscle tissues? And now once you do that, you are able to now have plenty of agriculture for humanity. So when someone says, how are we going to live on a planet when the population goes from 9 billion to 20 billion? You can say, you know what? Simply solving the problem of cattle allows you to feed twice as many people. Now you think you have actually solved the real problem. Until another moonshot thinker comes about and say, wait a sec. What if we can simply have a vegetarian meat? That means a food that's made out of plant but tastes exactly like meat. And now once you do that, now you have actually gotten rid of even the idea of having a biofactories that create the muscle tissues. And you can see these things are not some dream someone has. These are the problems that are being solved right now by entrepreneurs. So there are companies today that are actually taking the stem cell and creating muscle tissues, and their entrepreneurs are going beyond and actually creating the meat that is made out of the plant protein. And both these ideas are actually the ideas that will free up the agriculture for twice as many people, and will free up the fresh water for the humanity. So if you want to solve problems like that, you have to always ask yourself, what is the root cause of that problem rather than the symptom that you currently see? Once you identify the pain point you have, then you need to understand what is the root cause of that pain and solve that root cause, not just on the surface what the symptom is. Big problems will push the humanity forward. The bigger the problem, bigger the opportunities, and the more people you're helping, bigger the enterprise you'll be creating.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there.
Rule number 5 is develop curiosity.
How would you guide people into not getting distracted and knowing what is right to focus on?
Well, I think you go back and saying, why am I doing it? Let's assume whether it's pick anything you want, whether it's an NFT or a crypto or whatever.
Yeah.
How is that what I'm going to do is going to improve someone else's life? Would it improve 1 billion people's life because I bought NFT? If the answer is no, then why are you wasting your time, right? Yeah. So to me, the biggest thing to learn in life is curiosity. If you ask me, there's one gift you could give someone you love the most, and I hate to say that, the biggest love I have for anyone in this world probably be your children. Mm-hmm. I mean, anyone, that's I think, fair. Right? Is your children are the one that, they give you unconditional love and you give them unconditional love. And the biggest gift you can give them is that. So our job as a parent is not to take them to the water and make them drink. Our job is to make them thirsty. How do you make them thirsty? Is make them intellectually curious. Once you give the curiosity to the children, guess what? They will never stop learning. They will always be learning. They'll always find their water and they'll always be drinking. And that's your goal, is to make them curious. And what makes them curious is to constantly think about what is possible, not what is not possible. What if it was possible? And the two most beautiful words in English language are imagine and what if. Imagine if this was possible. What if I could do it, right? And that's it. And then they'll constantly and become like a child. Why? Why it can't be done? Why it couldn't be done before, right? And asking why makes you curious, and that's how allows you to dig deeper and deeper and deeper. If I may continue on that chart, Jay, I want to talk about, as I said, I have 3 children, and I want to talk about them for many reasons. One is to show people what really matters in life. It's not just simply about leaving the better world for our children. It's also about leaving the better children for the world, to continue to go where not only you get to push the humanity forward, you actually have trained them and made them curious enough for them to be able to continue to push the humanity forward.
Rule number 6 is think imaginatively.
What are the mindsets that have made you successful, Naveen?
Obviously, to me, the number one thing that has really changed the way I look at life is the possibilities of the what is possible, not what is not possible. And let me rephrase that. I think it didn't come out quite the right way. Is that the possibilities that what if this could actually be solved. So the 2 words that I always loved in English language are what if and imagine. Imagine is the only word that I know when I say, Peter, imagine. All of your preconceived ideas go away, and now I'm able to say, imagine a world where this happens. And just the word imagine, it takes away all the preconceived ideas. With him, you can create a completely new story out of Peter's mind because he's ready to imagine, right? So, and when you do that, it allows you now, the question really you have to ask yourself is, when you tell someone to imagine, is it vivid enough? Is it detailed enough that someone can actually create that picture in the mind? So you can't say, imagine a company that is $500 billion worth and is a market leader in this. And it's like, I don't know how to imagine that. But imagination needs to be something as clearly as Martin Luther King says. Imagine a world where a black girl is walking, holding a hand with a white boy, walking hand in hand together. Vivid, anyone can imagine that. And so your job is, when you say imagine, is to create as detailed way to someone to say that's the world we want, right? So anytime I create a company, I create that vision of imagine. So our tagline, as you know, is always been the same. Imagine a world, right? Imagine a world where illness is optional, right? What did it mean? Meant was, imagine a world where your mom is no longer sick. Your grandma no longer needs the care. Your grand uncle didn't have to die from cancer. And the reason I say that is how you move people from saying, I want to be part of your journey.
Rule number 7.
Your genes are not your destiny. So don't let someone fool you that you just have a bad luck and you got the bad genes. That's why something is happening. It turns out it's not your gene, it's your gene expression that you get to control. Well, more than that, 99% of the genes that actually are in our body don't come from our mom and dad. They come from these microbes, 100 trillion. Let me say that, 100 trillion. That's more than the debt of the United States. That slightly more than the people that even Peter has impacted, right? 100 trillion. And they literally control every part of our body. That realization, once we realize that we have to find a way to analyze the gene expression, which is your RNA, and not focus on what microbes are in our body, but focus on what they are actually doing. Because our body is a biochemical sensor. We need to know what these microbes are producing, because the same microbe can produce something good in one environment and something toxic in another environment. And that's the reason that 2 people can eat the same food and have a completely different impact. Right? So with that understanding, we said, how do you do that? There was no company on earth that was actually doing the gene expression or RNA testing. So I went from university to university, from every lab, Lawrence, Berkeley, Lawrence, Livermore, really went to NASA JPL, NASA Houston, NASA Kennedy Space Center, and finally when I was at Los Alamos National Lab. How many of you know what Los Alamos National Lab is famous for? What is it famous for? Atomic bomb. The Manhattan Project was not done in Manhattan. Sorry, Manhattan guys. It was done in Los Alamos at New Mexico. These people really know the deep science. That is where we found the technology. They were working on a biodefense project. For 10 years, they spent multi-billion dollars. And when they say biodefense, I'm going to trust them that it's biodefense work, right? That project was understanding if there was a terrorism in our great country, how would we ever protect ourselves? And the only way we knew how to do that is to know what these microbes are producing and how they're going to impact the human gene expression. And I managed to actually get an exclusive perpetual license to the technology. It started Viome. And in fact, the chief science officer who built the technology works for us. And then guess what happens? You have to hire amazing AI. So I hired one of the few Turing fellows, the head of IBM Watson Research, who does all of our AI.
Rule number 8 is discover your mission.
Has anyone ever told you how much of a fired up inspirer you are?
Oh my God.
Listen, there's a mission that you've got, the mission of your business, Viome, or Viome.
Viome.
And it's to make illness optional, and you've built an artificial intelligence driven platform which helps to develop precision nutrition to prevent and reverse chronic diseases. This is huge. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, Sister Jenna. So the idea is that we fundamentally believe there is no reason that we as humans should suffer from a chronic disease. And when I say chronic disease, I mean obesity, diabetes, heart diseases, cancer, depression, anxiety, dementia, Parkinson's, any type of autoimmune diseases. There is nothing that says that we have to have them. In fact, what's interesting to me was your DNA, your genes are not your destiny. In fact, your genes never change when you become depressed. You can do your DNA test before you're depressed. After, your DNA is still the same. Your DNA never changes when you have a heart disease. What really was interesting to me was that it is a lifestyle. So these are the choices we make. So when people say, oh my God, it's a bad luck that you got cancer. I'm sorry, no, you made bad choices. That's how you got cancer. You got heart disease because you made bad choices, not because you had a bad luck. And to me, the food is the medicine. What we realized was that people think, oh my God, this artificial intelligence, and what are these guys are so advanced. Now they're telling us you can eat the right food and somehow the diseases will go away. And I'm saying, no. This is not me. This is something we knew 5,000 years ago in Ayurveda. And even 2,500 years ago when Hippocrates said, all diseases begin in the gut. Let food be thy medicine. Let thy medicine be the food. Right? We knew this. This is nothing. This is not a rocket science. What is rocket science is to understand what food is good for you and what food is bad for you. There is no such thing as universal healthy food. Remember, one man's food is another man's poison. And when we did the analysis of my own gut and my body, it turned out it says don't eat spinach. Spinach contains a lot of oxalate, and my gut microbiome was not able to digest the oxalic acid. In turn, it would have caused inflammation and a kidney stone. So even though Popeye told us that spinach is good for everyone, well, Popeye was not the scientist. So don't listen to Popeye. It told me not to eat broccoli, not to eat cabbage, because it had a lot of sulfate, and the sulfide in my gut was causing inflammation. Right.
Rule number 9 is find the right community.
In Silicon Valley, where there are more entrepreneurs being created, what is one thing unique about that culture is when you have failed, people believe you have now learned enough. You got enough wounds on your back to be able to say, hey, now this entrepreneur actually is a better entrepreneur than someone who has never failed, right? So to me, and what I find about really fascinating about Silicon Valley and many of the things, the group that, we surround ourselves with, which is the second part. Surround yourself with people that believe in you, that uplift you, and that allow you to go even further, where your dreams are the smallest dream in that group, right? So when you go tell someone you're going to the moon, they don't say, oh, that's not going to happen. They ask you, where are you going to land? What kind of fuel you're going to be using? They literally just, of course you're going to do that, right? And that is the kind of things you want to do. So I think, Peter, I was going to turn on you and say, how does someone find that community and group of people where you can actually dream big? And even though you are crazy and you can sound crazy, but those crazy ideas are just fine.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is follow your heart's desire.
How do people find the energy, the ability to say, actually, you know what, I'm going to use this time to be more curious, to be more creative, because that's going to lead to a better world for me and for others?
Well, first of all, no one should be doing things that they don't enjoy. So I have a very simple rule in my life. As I said, I wake up at 4 a.m. and the day I feel when I wake up at 4 a.m., I'm not jumping out of the bed. That means I'm doing things I don't enjoy. Yeah. So rule number 1, when you wake up in the morning and if you're not jumping out of the bed, you should quit what you're doing because that's not your calling. When you find your true purpose, find your, North Star, you can never, ever just lie down because you're so driven to solve that problem. If I may say, a lot of people talk about passion. I think the passion is for hobbies. Passion is for losers. The true winners have obsession. Obsession to solve the problem, not obsession about things, obsession to solve the problem. When you're truly obsessed about solving a problem, you go to sleep thinking about it and you jump out of the bed wanting to do it. And that to me is find something that you're willing to die for and live for it. Find something that you're willing to dedicate your life to solving and then solve it, right?
Yeah.
Right. And, a lot of people give up because anytime you do something, there are going to be the times that things do not working out exactly what you expected. And to me, that's a sign of you're alive. Because the only way you know when you're alive because you have a heartbeat and the heartbeat goes up and down and up and down. And when it's smooth, you're dead. So if you're looking for a life that's a smooth life, you're looking for a life of a dead person. Find things when they're going up and down that tells you're alive. When you are down, just hunker down and know that the next beat is going to be up. And when you're on top of that beat, never become too arrogant because always remember the winter is coming and winter shall come, right? And that is the life is that most people spend their life thinking they need to make money, so they do something they don't enjoy. Guess what? When they come home, they cannot enjoy because they wasted their life doing things they don't enjoy. And they turn the TV on, as you say, to switch off their mind. And now they're being bombarded with the most, if you're watching news, unfortunately, it's all about negativity for many reasons. Our mind, our amygdala is looking for negative news. So negative news catches our attention. And that's the reason newscasters know to get your attention. If it bleeds, it leads. They want to talk about all the negative stuff. So you're bombarded and now you're even more negative than you were at work. And the thing in life is to get yourself out of that mode. Not only find your purpose, but truly be grateful for the life you're living in. As you know, I started another company called iNome. And the goal there is really simple. What if we can create a world where chronic illness is a matter of choice? What if illness actually become optional? And people say, that's a freaking crazy idea. And you're onto something. Right?
Yeah.
So, about a year ago when I said, we are going to make illness optional. That was a crazy idea at that time. And a year later, now we have not only the technology, but the people who are actually doing it, right? So a crazy idea
that a day before a breakthrough is a crazy idea, the day after it's an obvious idea, right?
Sure.
So we have now the head of the Watson research came and joined us to do the artificial intelligence to look at what's happening inside your body. Dr. Massier joined me to essentially understand how to interpret all this data. Dr. Yusevich, who was working at Los Alamos National Lab, it turns out they were working on a technology for biodefense work for national security. And the whole purpose was to know what is going on inside the human body.
Right.
So we took that technology, got exclusive license, put the team together, and now we launched the company where we are able to analyze everything in detail inside your body.
Wow.
And I'm going to tell you some of the things that, not being a rocket scientist or not being a doctor, right? It still doesn't stop you from pushing the envelope and changing the way people do things, right? So, for example, the reason we were able to do our launch to the moon for so cheap is because we were thinking more like a software guys. Don't build a big rocket, start to build a smaller rocket and build another thing on top of that can go off and take to the moon. Just like the software programmers do, they build modules, right? And the same thing happened in the medicine. Everybody is focused on therapeutics. You have Alzheimer's, how do I build a drug for that?
Right.
You have Parkinson's, how do I cure it?
As opposed to how do I prevent it?
That's exactly right.
We are a walking, talking ecosystem. So if you think from a spiritual perspective, or you think about from a larger universe perspective, we humans are part of this larger ecosystem we call environment. We as humans are environment in ourselves, the trillions of microorganisms inside us. We are a ecosystem. And when our ecosystem gets damaged because we are feeding it the wrong thing, then our body essentially starts to suffer. And same thing, when we start to impact our outside environment, our body starts to impact because we're part of this larger ecosystem. The thing that's most interesting is that it's only now that we are able to understand what is going on inside our body. It used to be completely a black box. And people always felt, for the time, they always wanted to eat healthy. But the problem was no one knew what was healthy. And so you will come up with these fad diets, but you start to look at the paleo diet, and you start to look at the ketogenic diet and the lactane diet, and every day there is a new fad diet. The fact is, you and I share almost the identical DNA. 99.9% of our DNA is identical. When it comes to our organism, our environment inside our body, less than 5% is the same. And that's the reason there is no such thing called inflammatory food or a healthy food, because a food that's healthy for you may not be healthy for someone else. In fact, the food that's healthy for you today may not be healthy for you in 3 months.
And explain for people why exactly that is.
Yeah, so first of all, if you think about it, that our bodies are extremely unique, as I said, and our ecosystem inside the gut, so every time you eat food, what's the first thing is being encountered? Is encountered by the microbiome. And depending on their ecosystem, they're able to metabolize that food and either produce the nutrients that your body needs, or it can produce the toxins that actually hurt the body and inflame the body. So for example, spinach. Most people will think spinach is healthy. It turns out spinach is not healthy for me. And the reason is spinach has a lot of oxalate. And if you don't have the oxalobacter in your gut, it's actually not going to be oxalate cannot be metabolized by the gut microbiome. That means it's now being fed by someone else who is going to create lipopolysaccharides, which is LPS, which is going to cause inflammation in your body. So it turns out that as we have gone through now tens of thousands of people in our things, we find 30% of the people in our system today are, in fact, spinach is harmful to them.
I'm surprised that high.
Yeah, and more than interesting thing is 50% of the people that we see, the thing called polyphenol, everybody thinks the pomegranate juice is good for them, or the walnuts are good for them, or the blueberries are good for them. All of these are really good for about half the people. Other half, you're simply wasting your money. It does nothing other than stressing and harming your body because you do not have the right organisms to be able to digest them.
I came to the United States 35 years ago, and I had $5 in my pocket, barely spoke the language, right? And God has been very, very kind to us. I mean, any which way you look at it, every single day I feel we are so blessed. This is my 7th company, and knock on wood, everything that I have done so far has been really, really successful. And to me, I am more focused on making an improvement in people's lives, because the people who helped me become who I am don't need my help. And that is one of the worst feelings you can have, is when you can't pay back the debt you have. You know there are people who helped you. You did not do it yourself. And you ask them, what can I do for you? And you say, nothing. Nothing. And that's the worst feeling you get, is that you have all this obligation to the society. What would you do? So if you can't pay back, you pay forward. And to me, that is really became who I am, is constantly focus on what can I do that will change the lives of billions of people around the world. It's not about money anymore, because, and that's something that I try to tell a lot of young people who focus so much on making money, that making money is like having an orgasm. If you focus on it, you'll never get it. So if you just enjoy the process and do the things that you love, you'll automatically get what you're looking for, but just don't focus on it.
Who are these organisms? What are their names? Are they named Paul and Tom and John? And it's Paul, Tom, and John, but is Paul the plumber, or is Paul the entrepreneur? Is Paul the electrician, or what is Paul actually doing? So knowing who they are doesn't tell you anything until you know exactly the function they are performing. So if you think about, by knowing the organism, it simply tells you what they could do. But just like any one of us, we have a potential, but we could be doing completely different things depending on what else is around us. So if you if you are with me, you could be calm and quiet. You could be with Lisa, you could be partying, right? So depending on who else is with you, you change your behavior, and simply based on what is being fed to you, you change your behavior. Basically, we have more foreign cells in our body than the human cell. When it comes to gene expression, our human DNA only expresses about 20,000 genes, and the microbiome in our gut produces about 2 million to 20 million genes. So at best, we are 1% human from a gene expression perspective, or worse, we are 0.01% human. Most people think of our DNA as our destiny. Our genes are our destiny. It turns out the genes are really not your destiny. It is obviously your microbiome, but even within the genes, it is a gene expression that counts, not the genes in themselves. And here's what I mean by that. Every part of our body has identical DNA. So our hair, our skin, our lung, our heart, everything has the same DNA, but they're completely different. It is the expression of the same DNA that causes the thing to be what they are. So that means nature has put together something called epigenetically. That means you can control what genes are expressed, what genes are overexpressed or underexpressed. Now imagine what happens. Our microbiome releases these things called metabolites, which are the small molecules. After they digest the food, they release these nutrients and metabolites that are absorbed in our blood.
As a reaction to what is digested.
What is digested.
Okay.
And then these metabolites are absorbed in our blood, and guess what happens? They start to epigenetically start to control our gene expression, right?
Dude, this is so important.
And that is really the key, is that they now can change the gene expression of what is going on inside the human body. Not only your immune system, whether it is underactive, overactive, and essentially, or saying this is a friend or a foe, they're training the immune system, but more importantly, they're also changing your gene expression. So for example, what they found was recently that the cancer is not only caused by the microbiome and influenced by microbiome. 2 weeks ago, they found that pancreatic cancer is the microbes moving from the gut, going to pancreas, shutting down the immune system in the pancreas, and let the cancer grow. And they actually found that if you're able to put the antimicrobial thing in the pancreas and use the immunotherapy, they shrank the pancreatic cancer by 50% in a few weeks, right? Wow. They found, the Mayo Clinic did the research about 3-4 months ago. They said the breast cancer is caused by the microbiome. They look at 1,600 breast cancer tissues and found the same microbiome. What's more important there is
all the people that had that shared a similar microbiome.
Similar microbiome. Very interesting in the cancer tumor. But more important,
whoa. The cancer tumor has its own microbiome.
So cancer tumor had the microbiome. And here's the more interesting part: the therapy for cancer, whether it works or it kills you, depends on your microbiome. So the two research...
Your microbiome or the microbiome of the cancer?
No, your microbiome. So it's very interesting when you take a drug, whether it's a chemotherapy or it's immunotherapy. So chemotherapy drug, whether it actually works or completely creates toxins, depends on your microbiome. That
because the microbiome is metabolizing
these chemotherapy drugs, and sometimes it turns them into poison that is guaranteed to kill you. Other time it detoxifies it doesn't kill cancer, or it actually amplifies and allows it to kill cancer. Right? Immunotherapy, the same way. They found that certain microbiome would make it 10x more impactful for immune system to attack the cancer, or it actually doesn't. So whether even not just the cancer is caused by a microbiome, whether the cancer treatment works or does not work, depends on your microbiome. They found the same thing with PTSD. They found that depression is obviously the inflammatory disease. And when you fix your gut, I mean, even our customers, remember, we don't go out as Viome ever cure a disease. We fix the inflammation and we fix the balance in your gut. And some people will tell us that, hey, I had depression, it's gone. I had anxiety, it is gone. I had acne, it is gone. And there were 2 women who went on Dr. Oz show, and one of them lost 71 pounds. We were not trying to help her lose weight. She had inflammation and we fixed the inflammation. People have autoimmune diseases, IBD, IBS, and you go through these diseases, which are simply the names we give to certain set of symptoms. The fact is, all of these diseases are fundamentally chronic inflammation that can be controlled through your diet, right? So the trick really is not saying what is a healthy food. You need to say it's not about the food, it's about me. What's healthy for me, not what's a healthy food. It's very interesting is that human species, actually everyone thinks is greedy. And it turns out actually we as human species are very giving. In fact, giving and philanthropy and taking care of others is built into our DNA. So if you go back and look at the things when we were living in small tribes, we all realize that if our tribe died, we could not survive alone. That means taking care of tribe was something we did for our own survival. And I really think it's very interesting is that today, we believe it doesn't matter how much we have, we're going to always want more, and there is always going to be scarcity because people are greedy. In fact, we can go out on a stadium, 70,000 of us could sit in a stadium, and we enjoy the game without ever feeling greedy about air or oxygen. We never slap the guy next to us and say, stop breathing my air. This is my air, I paid for it. All of us can enjoy air and oxygen because we inherently believe the air is in abundance, oxygen is in abundance. Now imagine if the energy becomes the next air that becomes abundant. That means it's democratized and it's demonetized. Now, every 90 minutes, more solar energy falls on planet Earth than we use in the whole year. It's just simply a matter of conversion. And that will happen. It is no different than if you go back a couple of 100 years ago, the most precious metal used to be aluminum. And the reason was because it was very hard to extract pure aluminum, and we needed to extract from bauxite, which was extremely hard to do. Until the technology called electrolysis came about, it made it so cheap that we now throw it away. Now, what would be the electrolysis of the solar power that will make it so easy, so cheap that electricity or energy will become abundant like air, and it will be freely available to everyone. And if we have a free energy, an abundant free energy, you'll be able to get abundant, fresh, clean water. Even in the dirtiest places in Africa, you'll be able to distill the water, and all the organisms that people get sick from, that can all go away. Right? Now imagine the same thing can happen with agriculture. Same thing can happen with the food. What if we had abundance of food? What if everything that we value today, everything that we fight over today, what if all of those things become abundant, right? What is it that we fight over? We fight over land, water, energy. And you start to think about,
if we can have abundant energy, just like we talked about, abundant water that we talked about, and land, where is the scarcity of land? We are a tiny pale blue dot in our own solar system. Our solar system is a tiny dot in our galaxy. Our galaxy is a tiny dot in our universe. And our universe may be a tiny dot in this multiverse. Where is that scarcity of land we talk about? The scarcity is our mind that believes we cannot live anywhere else. What if we can change that? Anytime, remember, if you are an expert in that field, my best advice is not to go do something in the space that you know a lot about. If you are an expert, you are only able to make an incremental improvement to the things that are already being done. So I always tend to, this is my
Because you've limited your own way of thinking?
Because you take many of the things as granted. That means the foundational things that you have, you take them as granted. You don't even question them. That is how it is done. When you come from outside the industry, you're able to question every single thing that people have taken it for granted. So if you think about, this is my 7th company, and I have never started, no two companies have ever been in the same industry.
Wow.
Right? When I started space, I had no idea how somebody is going to go to the moon. My first question when somebody asked me that was, I have no idea, it keeps moving. Every time I target, it moves. Then I understood there is orbital dynamics around it, right? That became really easy. So I was known as the space junkie because I started to learn about space. And then when I saw this technology at Los Alamos National Lab, that they are able to analyze the body, every single thing that's going inside, it was fascinating enough. Then I said, you know what? I am going to go start reading. And when I go, my first approach is to go find 10, 20 books that I can read. I never like to read one book because then you are more or less that person's belief system becomes your belief system. Yeah. So what I do is I read 20 different authors because then I want to see where the people differ from. So I can form the opinion because now I know what everyone else is saying. Then I start reading all the science journals.
What do you do when you encounter something, though, that you don't understand? Like, the microbiome is so vast.
So the thing is, you need to understand the basic vocabulary. So as you know, I'm also on the board of Singularity University. And being on the board of Singularity University, it gives me the basic background of what is genetics, what is epigenetics, what is the nanotechnology, what is the neuroscience. And the basic vocabulary, once you have that, you're able to make a lot more sense when you read the articles, when you read the books. And then what I do is in each subject, that when I'm learning, I set my Twitter feed only for the science journal, only in that field. That means I'm going to be looking at the science magazine, the New Scientist, and every single science magazine that has the articles about that subject. And when I wake up in the morning, I get up around 4:30 in the morning, and I spend the first 2 hours just going through every science journal, what has come out since I went to bed.
I love that.
Right? And then once I know that, then I start to learn and start to ask people. I would call the authors of the book. I'll meet the people. One of the reasons people believe that it can't be done, because in their mind, it is impossible.
Totally.
The minute people believe something is impossible, it becomes impossible just for them and no one else, right? So now let's talk about living on the moon. Because say, how can you possibly live on the moon? Are you that naive to not know there is tremendous amount of radiation? How are we going to go live on the moon? So one of the things I'm going to talk about is how do you take the most complex problem and you start to break it down into simple things? And I want to give that mindset to everyone who's listening to it. So let's start with it, like living on the moon. When people say, you cannot live on the moon because there is such high radiation. And you say, stop for a second. Now let's see what technologies currently exist or needs to be created to make that possible. And suddenly you will realize that nature has already solved many of these problems. We find bacterial species growing in radioactive nuclear waste. Imagine what that means is, now the nature has figured out how to protect its DNA from extremely high radiation and use the radiation as a source of energy. Now, if we can take these bacterial genes, use CRISPR, which is a genetic editing technology, to modify the human genes in vivo, would it be possible to become radiation resistant?
Absolutely.
Now, the technology may not exist
today, but would it be there in 3 years or 5 years? Absolutely. So now we say, okay, that problem is not in the beyond the realms of physics. It can be solved. Now is the next thing people say is, fine, I give that to you. How are we going to grow the food on the moon? And my answer to that is, that's a dumb question. The question you need to be asking is, why do we need to eat food? And then suddenly people say, oh, you're that stupid. In that case, let me tell you that. We need food because we need energy. We need nutrition. And I say, stop for a second. Let's analyze both of them. You need energy. The plants can get energy from the solar system like photosynthesis. Bacteria gets energy from radiation. Can't we use either photosynthesis or radiation as a source of energy? Yeah, that's quite possible. Now, it comes to now nutrition. What nutrition are we talking about? Well, we need hydrogen, we need oxygen, we need nitrogen. Hold on. There is a water on the moon. If there is a water, there is H2O. That means there is hydrogen, there is oxygen. We can break down the water and you get hydrogen and oxygen. Now, the nitrogen thing is pretty interesting. Let's think about how we're going to get there. Let's put that on the shelf. Now, living on the moon is simply about how do we get nitrogen to the moon. And that problem now we can work on solving. And that is really what I mean by taking a complex problem, breaking it down and saying, what is it that needs done to solve that problem? The millennials is starting to feel that, they're coming off their parents, which became the me society, me, and they're having that thing and said they want to rebel against it. So they want to convert the me into we, and they believe the way they can change the world is somehow become a liberal society where no longer we care about ourselves, but we care about everyone else. What they don't realize is that doing good and doing well don't have to be mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, even if you're the richest man in the world, you can only do a small good before you run out of the money. The only way you can do a large good is to actually create a profitable venture. If you care enough to solve the problem, then build a business that actually solves the problem. And if you make it profitable enough, you can go out and expand that and take it to billions of people around the world, or else you'll always be stuck for 100,000 people or 10,000 people or 1 million people. The day you start a company, ask yourself the first question, God forbid, if I'm actually successful in doing what I'm doing, how is it going to impact 1 billion people? And if it's not, why would you do that? So if you start a company, there are very few things you have to do. Ask yourself, what are you willing to die for? And then live for it. And if you can do that, you will find your calling. You will find the thing that you actually care about. And when you care about something deep enough, you will go out and solve the problem. And if you can make it profitable venture, then you will actually make a serious impact in the world.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome.
For 10 more amazing rules from Jay Shetty, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
And it makes us do things that we would never ever do. It makes us say things to people that we love that we would never want to say to them. And on the other end, it stops you from saying things you really want to say to someone because you don't want to appear weak.